Want to welcome Jared Redding, a man that needs no introduction, brand new to the Inside the Rebels on 247sports.com. Good friend of mine, good friend of Jake Nichols, my co-host, who is out sick right now. Welcome to the Hit It To Hoover podcast. It's Thursday night, February 17th, 8:30 at night, and we are literally here for opening day. Jared, how's everything going? How excited are you for college baseball this year?
Man, it's tomorrow, and it really just it's surreal. I mean, you talk about last season was just such a sigh of relief compared to what we had the year before. It just gave us a sense that baseball is back. Especially with Major League lockout right now and all the questions surrounding that. It's about that time for college baseball to kind of take center stage, and very well could happen this year. Just because of that, and just because of all the talent they have in the SEC.
Obviously, everything, all the excitement is in the state of Mississippi for baseball right now. Mississippi State, I want to mention them first before we talk about Ole Miss. Being an Ole Miss guy, having Mississippi State won that national championship, do you feel like Mike Bianco has the monkey on his back right now? Or is it still, okay, hey, this is the year that we could do this, but there is still no monkey on the back of Mike Bianco?
Well, first off, I think the monkey on the back of Bianco is not just really his in-state rival. Granted, he does have a not so great record against state, in his previous couple of years. Ever since really sweeping them in 2014, it's just kind of been a one-sided state thing. But the main question about Mike Bianco and the question surrounding him is just, can he make it back to Omaha? Of course, he made it to Omaha in 2014, was in the Final Four of that one, lost to eventual national runner-up who would lose to Vanderbilt. They lost to Virginia that year. But ever since then, ever since 2018, they've had probably, stacked on top of each other, some of the most talented rosters in the SEC. And that's kind of where Ole Miss's streak of 3 straight full seasons with 40-plus wins all kind of started with that recruiting class that featured the likes of Greg Kessinger, Thomas Dillard, Brian Rollison, all guys who are going to be playing in the major leagues right now. But at the same time, he hasn't really gone to Omaha with it, which is pretty crazy to think about. You talk about what happened in 2018 with Tennessee Tech coming into Oxford and winning that regional in the way that they did, all the home runs that they hit. You talk about just being one game away against a far superior Arkansas team, but then again, a team that was really catching one pop-up away from winning a national championship the following year. Obviously, Ole Miss has 16-1 going through the 2020 season. Obviously, that did not happen for obvious reasons. So who knows what would have happened of that? Some Ole Miss fans claim a national championship that year because they don't know what would have happened. And then just last year, just obviously just not having enough gas in the end with all the injuries and whatnot, and losing to a head coach who's ironically coaching in the SEC now. So I think Bianco has a lot to prove going into this year, and I believe he has a talented roster to do it with.
When you look across the SEC West, obviously you know the names: Arkansas, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, LSU. Who are those teams do you expect to give Ole Miss a run for the money? Because Ole Miss coming into the season is the preseason favorite to win the SEC this year.
Yeah, they are the preseason favorite based on paper, but really, if you look across the board, with any of these people, with Vanderbilt or Mississippi State or Arkansas, those have kind of been Ole Miss's main 3 so-called SEC rivals, simply because those games have just had so much importance on them. Now, granted, 3 of those 4 teams I just mentioned are in the SEC West, and that's where it just gets interesting. But I think you look at, first off, Mississippi State, coming off national championship, your closer, Landon Sims, is going to be your Friday starter, which just speaks for itself, just the kind of pitcher he is and kind of the season that he had a year ago. Has some new starters there, but Chris Lemonis, he's had some pretty he's had some pitching that may not be tops in the SEC, but have done their job last year. Obviously, having Will Bednar, who pretty much willed Mississippi State to win a national championship that year, and just guys on the pitching staff that some of them just couldn't quite get opportunities they can, whether it be COVID or whether it be some things that have happened, just fortunate or bad luck. Arkansas, on the other hand, they have a similar scenario. Kevin Kopps and the type of season that he had a years ago. But at the same time with Arkansas, Arkansas's main thing is they got some hitters and they got some dudes uh, on on that squad. Vanderbilt, they're always going to be well coached, and they're always going to have probably, from 1 to 35, just a deep roster, just because of what they can deal with, and Tim Corbin and the type of program that he's built. Even with Vanderbilt, it's hard to not play for a guy like Tim Corbin and stuff he's done. But LSU is definitely in the mix. Obviously, I know they kind of had a down year ago based on LSU standards, but you can never count them out. Whether or not Paul Maneri is there or not, whether or not Skip Bertman, the legend himself, is there. They kind of have this aura of championship baseball, whether they're playing for championships or not. You talk about you guys like Drew Bianco, Dylan Cruz, really talented guys. Tay Doughty, kind of goes on and on with them. I throw LSU in there as well. Florida, you could never tell. Last year, once again, it was kind of a down year by their standards, but it's the same kind of scenario with LSU, as with the exception of LSU having more hardware. So I think those guys, I think really what we want to look out for as far as sleepers. Kind of difficult to tell this early. Sometimes Georgia has some talented rosters. Tennessee last year with Tony Vitello and the great job that he's done there. He's just single-handedly revived, a previous interest in Tennessee baseball. Now, granted, the Omaha trip didn't go as well as they might have hoped. Going 2 and done. But you see that they're going all in with their head coach. You see that they're going all in on their team. With all the plant facility upgrades. Previous alumni getting on board, Peyton Manning, and just people kind of hopping on that train. So I'd say those 6 or 7 teams, I think, are the ones that any given day, these guys may be Omaha teams at the end of the day. I'm not saying 7 out of 8 of them will make it, but I think those are the most that are most definitely in the mix as of right now.
Before we talk Ole Miss baseball, I want to ask you. You went to Omaha last season. You saw Mississippi State out there. You saw a couple other SEC teams, and obviously you've been to Hoover. How did those two compare, and which one do you prefer to go to?
I think it's a little bit of an unfair comparison. Well,
you sound like Paul Maneri when he gave me the same answer here.
Well, I will say it's similar in the fact that just the atmosphere is phenomenal because it's baseball and it's the best of the best playing each other. And granted, the SEC is the best of the best when it comes to college baseball. I mean, just look at the past couple of years. Occasionally 4 out of 8 teams would make it to Omaha, and they're all from the SEC. The Hoover Metropolitan Stadium, obviously a smaller stadium, is really tucked away in Hoover, but it's just got such a family atmosphere to it. Just granted that a lot of these teams have played each other fast. Some of these fans have interacted with each other on one end of the aisle or the other. Usually boiling hot by the time you get there, obviously being Southeast United States and all the humidity around that time in May. But it's phenomenal. It really is. They always have something for everybody. Whether they had the fan fest across the street to get all the little kids to play on the playground, do baseball related stuff. Go on a zip line. It's just almost like a theme park, but there's just so happens to be a baseball game going on. Not to mention all the tailgating and all that stuff going on while that stuff's going on.
Before we get any further, I do want to say this. Now, this might be a little premature on your end, but the Hit It To Hoover podcast is planning on being in Hoover. Obviously, we're waiting on a couple people to confirm, but I'm going to go on record and say when we do travel down there to Hit It To Hoover, Jake Nichols and I, and whoever else wants to join us, the tailgating, the beer, the bourbon, the meat will be endless, and everybody is welcome from Ole Miss all the way even up to Rocky Top. And far-fetching as that may sound, I want to go on record with an Ole Miss crowd and say that the Hit It To Hoover podcast tailgate will be welcoming and open. Just bring some booze and bring some good meat. We'll throw it on the grill as well.
Trying to upstage qualifying by MIC. Well, yeah, I'd be surprised if you didn't. So that's just such a fun place to go. And I've been for 3 years. I went when Ole Miss won the SEC tournament title in 2018. Knocked off LSU to get there. That was probably Ole Miss's deepest team, up to this year's team. And I think this year's team, it could had the possibility to be one of the best that Bianca's ever had in his tenure. I don't say that lightly. But anyway, going back on the question, Omaha, it's the same, just the aura of the best are here. The main difference is obviously you're in a 30,000 seat stadium. You have, not as much humidity. It's just, you know, the weather is always gorgeous there when it's not raining or storming. It's just almost like a touch of heaven. No matter what spot you're in the stadium, every seat in that stadium is practically a good seat. And it's the same thing of it's just a celebration of college baseball. You go around the streets of Omaha, you go down, the main street. I can't think of it at the top of my head, but I've been down it before. You go further down there, there's the replica. Down a couple miles, there's a replica Rosenblatt Stadium where the old Rosenblatt Stadium used to be. There's just if you walk down Omaha, there are flags with each team that is playing or has ever played there in there. So it's like almost like a museum, if you will. Not to mention, obviously, all the good food around at the bars. The people in Omaha are the nicest people you'll ever meet. And they know that once you're in town, they'll know you. Are you going to the College World Series? And most of the time, the answer is yes. I was very fortunate enough to go last year and experience it firsthand. No matter what fan base was there, it was just one giant party and one celebration of college baseball and celebration of the college athletics year ending.
Jared, I want to ask you because you're a Mississippi kid and try to be as unbiased as possible, but I'm going to word this question pretty perfectly. Compare the Dud and Swayze Field. Those two are arguably the cathedrals of college baseball. They happen to be separated by close to about 2 hours. Starkville, Mississippi, Oxford, Mississippi. Been to both of them. How do they compare? And in your eyes, which one is a funner, cooler place to see a college baseball game at?
Well, I think the last part of it's kind of a little bit unfair judgment, but based on both of those places, obviously I grew up going to Swayze Field. I mean, I practically grew up inside Swayze, and the first thing that comes to mind is obviously the beer showers, right? It's something that I don't know how it started. I don't know if most Ole Miss fans themselves know how it started. Obviously, the excitement that generates for a home run will cause you to yell or jump, scream, or just so happens to anything that's in your hands at the time just go out the window. So that's kind of been etched in kind of college baseball lore. But same thing with Mississippi State in the left field lounge. My father we know is a graduate. My father and mother are both graduates of Mississippi State. They grew up there kind of during what was then the glory years, obviously before they won a national championship just this past year. They were there. My dad was a couple doors down for Rafael Palmeiro, which is an icon in Mississippi State baseball. Him alongside Will Clark, Bobby Thigpen, just so many good players that have played there. Could have won a national championship easily in '85. Who knows what would have happened had it not been for Texas and the run that they had that year. But in Starkville, it's such a nice atmosphere too, just because Starkville, I don't give Starkville enough credit for. And most people think Ole Miss is the most beautiful campus in America, and I honestly agree. I mean, I've lived here my entire life. I've never wanted to leave. But with Mississippi State, it's a different type of beautiful. Its beautifulness is just the landscapeness, or just the landscape and just the whole layout of the campus. It's a very comfortable confines kind of campus. There's ponds on the campus. You could literally go out there and fish if you wanted to. But left field lounge back in the day, obviously before they renovated and added a lot of nice amenities to the stadium, just one giant party. But it's a party where it's just grilling, just anything to the imagination, they can make it good. And people will just literally build stuff on top of their trucks to do so in order to watch the game. Back in the day, they did it so you'd have to watch tickets, and then it just kind of stuck from that point on. But it's nice even now. Of course, their moniker is the Carnegie of college baseball, or excuse me, the Carnegie Hall of college baseball. And I think they kind of lived up to it when they renovated their stadium, and I mean that wholeheartedly. Just it feels like it just has a minor league ballpark type feel. Obviously, a lot more fans than a minor league park would on any given Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or any midweek game. They've kind of kept that alive and made it a little bit less of a Mississippi State tradition, more of just kind of a celebration of Mississippi State baseball. If you're a fan of that team, but that in Swayze Field, I'd say, of course, obviously, the dude literally rebuilding the stadium from the ground up. That goes to Mississippi State. I mean, just simply because it's newer, it's more modernized. It's the same baseball field they've been uh, playing for a while, but they rebuilt the stadium around it and made it more modernized and made it uh, just a top tier collegiate baseball venue. And with Swayze Field, I think most people would argue that Swayze Field has that one up just simply just because of the atmosphere around it. Ole Miss is just known for having such a family atmosphere. Granted, Mississippi State is as well, but as someone who grew up in Oxford my entire life and just welcoming so many newcomers, a lot of the friends that I've met at Ole Miss, they make friends that'll last a lifetime in Oxford, Mississippi. And just the atmosphere and Ole Miss's baseball fans compared to all the rest of the sports is so unique because so many of the Ole Miss baseball fans are Ole Miss baseball fans, is compared to football or basketball. Now, granted, there's those that are all three and all the above, but baseball fans kind of have their own unique niche and special connection with the team. They do the same video board stuff since they've had the video board, the peanut butter jelly time. In
Now, I
between.
will say there are other SEC fans that are Ole Miss baseball fans, but everything else, they love their school, whether it be football, basketball, and baseball. They still have a special connection with Ole Miss baseball. Now, I'm not going to go down a road of naming names or who that is. There's some people out there, but you kind of hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of people that identify as an Ole Miss baseball fan, but don't necessarily identify as an all-around Ole Miss fan, and I know several of those people. I will say this, including myself, who like Ole Miss baseball. I guess it's just because it's the closest SEC baseball to Memphis, and obviously living in Memphis, we don't have baseball. Not a very good college baseball city. We're just not. We have a lot of talent, not a great team. It is what it is. But Jared, I want to ask you about this season, this Ole Miss season. This is the season that many like myself really expect a lot of big things out of this season. Obviously, Tim Melko. I want to start off with Tim Melko. What has he done this offseason? Obviously, coming back from the ACL injury. Mike Bianco's been very high on him. I talked to him in the preseason on the podcast here. I'm Hit It To Hoover podcast episode 2. Bianco talked about that, his offseason, his development. What are you seeing out of Tim Melko in the scrimmages that you've seen so far?
I mean, I don't think he's missed a beat. And frankly, just because of the lineup that Ole Miss has this year, Elko is going to have good numbers regardless, but you stack up those numbers against guys in the preseason like TJ McCants, in game one of the Scott preseason hit 4 for 4 with them home runs. And then he went perfect 2 days later, 2 for 2. You're comparing him with TJ McCants and you comparing him with, other guys in that Ole Miss lineup like Kevin Graham, a Peyton Chatagnier, Justin Bench, Hayden Leatherwood. This kind of goes on and on, and Tim Elko's right there in that mix. In last year, he was the captain for good reason. He was the guy who was there, when he came on as a freshman for the 2017-2018 school year and the 2018 baseball season. He was a guy who was just a likable guy. He always had a smile on his face. He was always there, the first one there, ready to work, all that. And, despite all that he had to go through, he had to literally just scrap, claw, and fight just to put away in the Ole Miss lineup. And it took him maybe 2 years to get that full spot with, he saw some in 2019, 2020 was really year to have a great year. Of course, that year we would not have known what Ole Miss would have done had it not been for COVID and all the shutdowns and whatnot. And Tim Elko was on pace to have just an absolute whale of a season. And last year, he was absolutely on his way to having a whale of a season. I mean, he was, I believe, at the top of my head, he was nearing into 10 home runs, before he tore his ACL. And I was there for that game. There was a error to first, and just the way I think just his momentum and that being at the base, he just kind of twisted in on him. Which towards ACL, the stadium went dead silent. And granted, there wasn't a whole lot of people there anyway, just because of a midweek game. It was at like 3:00 or something like that. And I remember like it was yesterday. It was 10 minutes after that happened, I went outside the press box. Someone was coming in, and someone told me there goes Omaha and stuff like that. And you just that and just combined with the news of later with Gunnar Hoagland being out for the season and all that, it was just like, okay, let's wad this up, throw the trash start over again. Tim Elko made Ole Miss believe again. Of course, he just gave Ole Miss fans a belief kind of when everything went dark, with his injury, Gunnar Hoagland's injury, Max Chofie, one of the best bullpen arms that they have. Ole Miss realized that he could not be mobile, obviously, with the ACL tear. But one thing he could do was, if he swung it the best way he swung it with, minimizing impact on his lower body, that he could at least get a base hit if need be, and then maybe put in a pinch runner. Everything happened. So that's what happened when they put up against A&M. He hit a home run in that series, which, made everybody smile. Yeah. And just the belief that this guy is a lot tougher than we realized. He could be out for the season, trying to prepare for next season and all that, but he wanted to help his team win regardless, no matter what. Now, granted, that was a really tough stretch of Ole Miss baseball during that window midway through the season. They lost 2 out of 3 for 4 straight series. And I believe it was like 6 out of 8 or something like that at one point, or maybe it was 5 out of 7. I couldn't remember the top of my head. But in that eventually later catapulted in Ole Miss taking 2 of 3 from Vanderbilt, which was a big deal. And then beating Georgia, and then the deep tournament runs that Ole Miss tends to somehow make in Hoover. For as he is a home run there, he hit a home run in the regional. He hit a grand slam in that regional, which is just extremely iconic. Hit one against Southern Miss in the regional final. And just he despite all the rigorous stuff they went through and all the pain that he went through with that, it wasn't about him, and that was about his team. And I think that's what made Tim Elko just such a likable figure on the Ole Miss squad.
Jared, one more roster question, then we're going to wrap it up with a personal question that I'm looking forward to asking you as a good friend to another good friend. Jared, let's talk about pitching. Obviously, starting rotation. I'm really excited about it. Who are those 3 guys, if anybody doesn't know, and who are out of those 3 guys are you most excited about watching this season?
I think all 3 of the starters, to be honest with you, each one of them have their own interesting story and their own piece of the puzzle. Obviously, Derek Diamond being the Friday starter going forward. He was the Sunday starter last year and was the Sunday starter in 2020 before COVID destroyed that season. But in 2021, Derek Diamond started absolutely on fire. My latest piece on 24/7 Inside the Rebels was about Derek Diamond and his first start of the 2021 season was just absolutely electric against Texas. He struck out 8 batters, which was a third of the batters that he faced, went in 6 innings. Struck out 8, walked 1, gave up 4 hits, but not really big hits. He had a streak of 9 retired batters, and so it was like, okay, this guy's untouchable. We combine this guy with Hoagland and Nikhazy, how can Ole Miss be beat? And that was kind of the thought at the beginning of the season, because Diamond kind of, made that last third fit. And as the season just kind of went on, and when SEC started, he just really seemed to struggle a little bit. And, this is a guy who gets a lot of strikeouts, a lot more strikeouts and walks, but at the same time will just give up hits. And that's something that really plagued Ole Miss the way through the season. Granted, it wasn't all his fault. Some of it may have been elsewhere or in the field or any other factors, whether it be just a good pitch that was just barreled up and it's just misfortunate in there. And he kind of, Bianco described it as kind of a confidence thing and kind of a mentality thing that once that kind of adversity hits, that'll do that to you. And then not just Diamond, it would be any pitcher. So he got relegated to the bullpen, kind of, framing on the final quarter of the regular season, and had to be thrown back in that weekend SEC rule when Gunnar Hoagland went down with the UCL injury. And he got back into it. He had a great performance in the SEC tournament, and had and just kind of had a really just solid regional, and kind of seeing the Derek Diamond that we've known. And he's gotten better, not just because of the improvement year 1, year 2. It's just the pitching staff as a whole. And there's not much, drop off, so to speak, with here's the good ones or here's the ones that we're not sure about. It's a little bit more level this year because the year past. But Derek being the Friday starter, I mean, everyone saw that coming just because, he went through his growing pains. He went through a lot last year and just really built him up. Guy I'm really interested in, probably the most interesting Rebel that I want to look at this season is the Saturday pitching starter, John Gaddis. Texas A&M Corpus Christi transfer. Some may not have known about him just because he came from a small program. During the preseason and fall ball, he just tore it up. He's a guy who makes quick works of his batters. He gets ahead early in strike counts. Pretty decent. Possibly a lot of pitches that would make you swing and strike out. In the inter squad preseason game this past Saturday, he had a completely perfect past Saturday. Was just proved why he should be in that role. I mean, not only did he didn't fall ball, but he did in spring with having gone through 5 straight innings. He had a streak of retired 12 batters. He had, I believe, at the top of my head, it was like somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 strikeouts during that time. Just kind of when you watch him pitch, he just kind of has that it factor when he's pitching. I don't know how you describe it. It's just something that you have to witness and look at. And then Drew McDaniel is a guy who was a pretty solid midweek guy going into last season. Put up some good midweek outings. Had to kind of wait his turn to be in that starting role, in which he had to do. I believe it was the week leading up to the Mississippi State game was when Derek Diamond got relegated to the bullpen, and he made the announcement that McDaniel was going to be the Sunday starter. And granted, he had a pretty good game pitching against State. Now, granted, it was debated about the bullpen situation of when to go with Taylor Broadway, when and whatnot. He was questioned a lot about that. I'm sure he had a good reason behind it, but it's one of those things where things just kind of happen near the end when your arm is wearing out, and what happens next from that point on. But Drew McDaniel's a guy who's just really worked his butt off since he got to Ole Miss. And he said it was the goal all along. It happened a lot earlier than they thought it would, but he made most of the chances. It wasn't always pretty at times. There were some outings, even in midweeks, where it wasn't always pretty. But he had an excellent performance in the SEC tournament. Kind of one of his coming out parties beyond the Ole Miss fan base, if you will, with him. But the bullpen with guys like Brandon Johnson, Jack Doherty, both guys who are kind of solid near at the top of that. Jackson Kimbrell, which is expected by many to kind of be that next Taylor Broadway, that guy who says, I'm going to get you out for 3 to 6 outs and call the day. That he's kind of expecting that role. Some newcomers in there. Jack Washburn, the transfer from Oregon State, he's going to be the first midweek guy this year. Hunter Elliott, a highly touted freshman from our way at Tupelo. Some pretty good ones, really good lefty, ironically wearing number 26, just like another Ole Miss pitcher that came before him, and Doug Nikhazy. So he may have a lot to live up to. But like I said earlier, with just the pitching this year, last year I feel like it was more kind of like there were these guys and there were these guys. And I feel like just that depth has just kind of leveled each other out now. Now that just so many guys are turning, plus they're all infused with that. They're all kind of infused together, and you got to think they're hitting against what's probably going to be the top offense in college baseball this year, or at least starting off, or on paper. But guys over 300, 4 of 5 all SEC selections for Ole Miss are infielders, of guys who can bop it. Jacob Gonzalez, like I said, Kevin Graham, Peyton Shotnier, Tim Elko, and it goes on and on. So you can't blame them for some of their trials by fire in the preseason just because that lineup's so good.
Jared, last question I have for you, and the thing's popping up. I got 8 minutes left. I gotta do the paid subscription to Zoom. I'm not doing it, whatever. Jared, I want to ask you this, and I'm gonna get you to brag about yourself because you don't like to brag about yourself. I do. I love bragging about you because you're my best friend. I love bragging about you. Jared, I want you to tell everybody quickly how much it means to you to have your new job and to bring the Ole Miss faithful a more in-depth look inside the Rebels, which is a program in a school that's your family, that you love so deeply. How much does it mean to you to have this job at Inside the Rebels on 247sports.com?
I mean, it's just an absolutely perfect storm. I don't know what other adjectives I could say to make it sound better, or to make it sound more humble on my part, but it's a blessing, just beyond comprehension, just because you know Oxford has such a special place in my heart. I've grown up here. I was born on the hospital in South Lamar, the hospital in Oxford, Mississippi. I was born in. That coupled with just my dad's family being here for shoot 4 or 5 generations ago. Just so long ago, I got to go far away with it, but um, and there's just so much to be proud of with the Reading in this county. Just we pride ourselves on hard work, no matter what we're doing. We don't always have to be, a veterinarian, or we don't always have to be an engineer. We don't always have to be a business person like my father and his father and his father were before me. But no matter what we do, just work and our best and do the best and be the best, whatever way possible, and be the best we could possibly be. And that's something we've always prided ourselves on. With me personally, and sports has always been a passion of mine from the very beginning. Um, obviously growing up right in the heart of SEC country with Ole Miss, um, whether it be my brother playing high school football, which kind of got me involved with high school football just because it became such a passion of mine to tell people about the game that I went to or what's going on, whether it be in writing or whether it be through words. It was just something that I always really enjoyed. And so many people said that this guy was going to work in sports one day. You know, I I thought they would be kidding back then to do that. But as time went on and you're in SEC country, you love sports, you love to talk about it. You have one of the top journalism schools in the Southeast and Ole Miss right in your backyard where you grew up. You can't ask for anything else. And plus, your special connection with Oxford makes it all the better. You know these people. If you have a car wreck or if you're going to have a bad day, those guys are the ones who are going to look out for you, take care of you. Um, they're the ones who a lot of people know each other. They're going to hold each other accountable. They're going to hold me accountable if I, mess up in a story or give it something factually incorrect, or whether I was a little bit too harsh on somebody. They're going to put my arm around me at the end of the day. They're going to hold my feet to the fire and be accountable. But at the same time, they're not going to love you any less for anything that you do. But just having been involved in this field ever since my junior year of high school, from a school newspaper to upstart high school football media outlets for the be local newspapers, and granted, it went through Ole Miss athletics and contributing some online content and being kind of a Swiss Army knife and wherever they need me. Was enough to eventually meet the right people at the right time. Fortunate enough to meet David Johnson, a guy who I work for now, there through that whole process. He was there to lift me up and believe me when I didn't really believe myself. And when the time came, I knew it was something that I couldn't turn down, especially working for a guy like David, a guy who I admire, respect, for a company and a website that I've had such admiration for and have been reading ever since I knew how to access it on a smartphone. It means a lot to be part of that, and knowing that your dues will pay off. No matter how long you think it might be, it will pay off if you stay at it, if you put in the work, if you be relentless with it, you surround yourself with good people, you ask the right questions, you get involved in the right places. It will take you as far as you want to go, and it's up to you to make that happen. Fortunately, I was there to make that happen in the day. But whatever the future happens here, I'm just going to keep going and give it my best for the Ole Miss fan base forever. Whatever beat I'm covering, whatever sport I'm covering, it's my job to be the best I can possibly be and glorify God in any way I can.
Jared, you're damn good at what you do. Tell them how they can follow you on Twitter and find all of your amazing work there at Inside the Rebels and 247sports.com.
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Jared E. Redding personally. You see a lot of content that I personally post there. David Johnson on Twitter, he kind of has our kind of de facto Inside the Rebels Twitter account, if you will. His Twitter account is Rebels247. Our sites are both in our bios. We have guys like Chris Brooks in the mix, Tyler Kumis, Brad Logan, the latter two being contributors, Chris being the recruiting guy. You can find a lot of their content on our timelines. The website, you go to 247sports.com. and go to the Ole Miss page, or you can type in InsideTheRebels.com and it'll take you straight there. Encourage everybody to, get that VIP subscription. Keep reading, keep viewing, because it's our mission to give out the best possible content we can for Ole Miss.
He is Jared Redding. Thanks for coming on the Hit It To Hoover podcast. I look forward to seeing you on Sunday at Swayze Field.
Looking forward to seeing you. Thank you.